Thank you to the channel members who got to see this video early. More info on how you can join later in the video. Since the dawn of time, men have been haunted by two words: length and girth, specifically in regards to a part of our body that we call our manhood. We call it this because the size of it directly correlates to how much of a man you actually are. Or at least the shadow government tells you that from a young age. But what happens when this body part doesn't measure up with the mind that it's attached to? Well, it used to be that you were out of luck, that there was no way to get ahead of the competition. But much like the Boston bombing suspects, Reddit thinks it has the answer. r/GettingBigger is a subreddit dedicated to men supporting each other as they try to get bigger down there following certain niche protocols and exercises. So today we're going to do a deep dive into this community and try to figure out who's using it, what they do, and who's selling them this forbidden knowledge. And just maybe if we follow their exercises, we can do an even deeper dive. What's poppin', Fortnite gamers? It's your boy Brandon Abstrxct. Now, there's actually a good chance you've heard of this community in passing. Critikal has made a couple videos talking about this community, but he just touched on the tip of the iceberg when it comes to them and everything they do. We'll get into all that later in the video though. Real quickly, I gotta get two things out of the way. Number one, please do not harass this community or anyone that I talk about in this video. And finally, it is my opinion and medical opinion that this stuff does not work and you'll just end up injuring yourself like you'll see in a bit. So please do not do anything that I mention in this video. If there was even a slightly proven way to make your member bigger, everyone in the world would know it. It would not be some hidden knowledge that you have to find on the weirdest corners of the internet. So please do not attempt this. But with all that out of the way, let's start with a quick overview of the community. GettingBigger was created in December 2020 and has gone on to grow to a community of over 130k members. And all of these members gather around to answer the age-old question: how can I have big dick? You can tell that penises are the focus of this subreddit because as soon as you open it, you get flashbanged with a ton of dick pics. But these dick pics serve a purpose. They are members of the community showing off their gains from following the subreddit's protocols to stimulate penile growth. Though critics would argue these gains come from the user inconsistently measuring, photo manipulation, the user not being at full power in their before picture, or just straight up being fake with pictures of two different people. And that's right, I said gains. You'll find out very quickly while browsing this subreddit that they use a lot of the normal lingo you would expect to hear when talking about lifting, like gains. Because to them, this is no different than doing a leg curl to grow your hamstrings. They are just doing exercises to grow a specific part of their body that they can't do at their local gym. They even talk about stuff like sets, reps, weight, pressure, and just general regimen. All things that if you read on their own, you would think you were just in a normal gym subreddit. In fact, you'll see the acronym PE thrown around a lot, but it stands for penis enlargement and not physical education. Much like a normal gym subreddit, you'll see people in the comments congratulating and hyping up people on their progress. Excellent work, would love gains like that. Great job, man, your head looks much fuller.
Where do you live?
But another thing you might notice is that for every supposed success story, there are a bunch of posts of people who need to seek medical attention immediately. I can't show any pictures obviously, but I saw enough dicks that looked like they belonged more on LiveLeak than on Reddit, asking if what they were experiencing was normal. The answer is no. Injuries included things like bleeding from your member, which is never good, to developing edema from doing the exercises. For those who don't know what edema is, it's essentially when your blood vessels leak out, causing fluid to build up in your tissue, causing really bad swelling. Imagine this but happening to your Long John Silver. And many times you'll see people say they had an injury, but they've recovered from it and they're ready to get back into their regimen like a true gym rat.
Did I ever tell you the definition of insanity?
Pretty much every other post is just people asking for advice on how to do PE and just general questions. And luckily for them, there is a starter's guide brought to you by the mods on the sidebar. So let's take a look at this plan and see what you can expect to do on your PE journey. So you looked at the subreddit and decided, hey, I want to give this a shot. Lucky for you, the guide is split into phases like a cinematic universe.
Say that again?
But before you even get into the guide, you have to do some reading first, like what to tell a non-believer. And it's always a good sign when a group of strangers need to train you on what to say in case people who actually love you, like your friends or family, give you some pushback. I'll get into this a bit later, but first we need to get some more context. And honestly, it starts off pretty boring with just understanding the big picture. It's mainly just teaching you the anatomy of your Johnson and what you're gonna target to create gains. You can either read it or watch this nice video by a guy named BD.
What's up, guys?
It's BD. Today I want to talk about the basics of penis enlargement.
Also, take note of BD because he'll come up later. They also recommend that you read a list of the possible injuries that can occur, which I'm really glad they open up with. I don't know how you can read about the risk of penile fracture and breaking the ligament that supports your dick and decide that it's still worth the risk. There was some guy in the comments saying that this was making him reconsider, and I really pray that he did. The last subjects you need to educate yourself on are, of course, your girth fundamentals.
But let's move on to the phases of girth gains.
And your stretching techniques for length.
So penis stretching is just something you can do with your hands, so it's completely free.
After you brushed up on your basics, it's now time to evaluate your size. This step is actually pretty good in the grand scheme of things, as it's meant to remind you what a normal size penis is, to make sure you're not comparing your lower head to an unreal expectation you have in your upper head. By the way, the average is about 5 inches for those who don't know. And after all that, if you're still interested in the program, we start getting to the fun parts. Obviously, first up is getting our starting measurement. Now, you might think this is a basic step, but there's actually a lot that goes into it. The most popular way, as far as I can tell, is doing a BPEM, standing for bone press erect measurement, where you take a ruler and push it into your crotch until you hit the pubic bone. Obviously, I can't show it, but it looks pretty painful because they're really pushing those rulers in there. Of course, though, you can always do an NBPEM, non-bone press erect measurement. You could even do an NBPFSM, a non-bone press flaccid stretched measurement. All actual acronyms, and I'm not even getting into all of them. Now, you also got to make sure you're factoring in your EQ when you're doing these measurements. EQ, of course, standing for erection quality. Pretty much just grading how bricked up you are. Anyways, with all that, you're now ready to move into testing the waters with manual exercises. Manual exercises, of course, being everyone's favorite thing, jelqing. So I can't actually show a demonstration of jelqing without YouTube being upset at me, but I can explain it. If you want to see a demonstration, Charlie does it in one of his videos, but watch it after this video. Anyways, you make an OK sign with your hand and slowly go up your Johnson, making sure to really compress it. I don't know why your hand has to be in the OK sign, but that's what the literature says. But there are other types of manual stretches besides jelqing. My favorite one being called between the cheeks. It's like tucking and drag, but they really yank it until it's, well, you can guess based on the name. It is recommended that you stick to these exercises for 2 to 3 months while you wait for your newbie gains. Newbie gains, once again, being an actual gym term. It's the phenomenon that once you start lifting for the first time, you will see pretty rapid muscle growth in the first year. Now, moving on to phase 2, which isn't anything really special. It's just keeping track of your progress and making sure you're not overworking yourself. Things like making sure you're getting enough rest, eating right, and your sessions aren't going on too long. Now, moving on to the phase I really want to talk about, which is phase 3. Because phase 3 is when we start talking about tools.
Tools! Tools! Duct tape, zip ties, and gloves! I have to have my tools!
Like I said earlier, jelqing is just the beginner stages. This is for the more advanced in their training. And some of these tools are just actually insane, so I'm gonna list them in a way that they get crazier as we go. Also, due to YouTube guidelines, I can't actually show you pictures of them, but I made my own images, which I think will get the point across. So let's start with one that most people probably know, which is a ring. It's a tool used to restrict blood flow to keep it all inside your member. A pretty basic thing that people use in the bedroom outside of this context. In this context, you're performing Kegels with it on in order to solidify the size. So when you take off the ring, it's still the same size as when you have it on. Another tool that's related to a ring is a clamp, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's a clamp designed for your shaft. It's pretty much the same idea behind the ring, but you can adjust how tight it is using a screw on the device. Moving on to our last piece of normal equipment, we have a pump. It's a tool used to create a vacuum seal around the area, which promotes blood flow. The thing that makes a pump interesting, though, is that it can be used for both length and girth. They even recommend doing a split workout regimen with it. The workout itself is mainly finding a good pressure and holding it for a couple minutes. But now we move on to some of the more wacky equipment you might want to include in your regimen. One of my favorites being a hanger. There are multiple kinds of hangers, but they're all the same idea. It's a tool that allows you to hang weight off of it, and some are even designed to let you use legitimate weight plates. And this tool is pretty simple. You just let gravity do its thing. Really nothing else to say about this one. The next tool is an extender. If you've ever seen a spine traction device used for stuff like scoliosis, it's pretty much that, before your Johnson. Once again, you just leave it on for a certain amount of time like every other tool. And finally, the tool to end all tools, the all-day stretcher. It's pretty much an extender designed to be worn under your clothes. I even saw a comment in the subreddit where someone mentioned that they wear theirs all the time at work. So remember, when you're talking to a stranger in public, there's a non-zero chance that they're wearing a device that's actively yanking their shit. But that's about it for the guide in terms of actual exercises. Now real quickly, let's talk about that non-believer's guide. This is written by a guy that I'll get into a bit later in the video, and in this post they provide 4 studies as proof that this works. So when someone gives you pushback, you can show them these as peer-reviewed evidence. Now 4 studies isn't that much, but you would imagine that they're presenting their best, most bulletproof evidence that this works to show a non-believer wrong. But I think you know where I'm going with this. So the first 2 studies I want to talk about are about extenders and pumping working. And the studies do show that these work. For people with a condition known as Peyronie's disease, a condition where you have an extremely unnatural curve down there due to scar tissue. Obviously I can't show it, but it makes your member look like a Tetris piece. I just feel bad for anyone that has this condition. Also, a little curve is always normal, so please do not worry, you probably do not have this. Anyways, if you don't have this condition, which is most people, this study does not apply to you. Trying to use this study as proof that it works on normal dogs is like saying that since prescription glasses help people with bad eyesight see better, then putting prescription glasses on someone with 20/20 vision will make their vision even better, which we know is not true. All these studies are saying is that a device can help people with a certain condition. It does not provide any evidence that it will work on people without that condition. Also, typically the length gain here is not from new gains. It is just reducing the curve of the condition. And it's not just me saying that, the posts about the studies say this themselves, saying that this does not apply to most people in the subreddit, and it's only good for generating a hypothesis. So 1 minute ago, this was peer-reviewed evidence showing proof to a non-believer that it works. And now it doesn't apply to anyone and it's good for generating a hypothesis. Moving on, there's another study that claims extenders work, but when you click on it, it's just the abstract of the study, with the last sentence saying it seems that extenders are the only devices with evidence of them working. And people in the comments were pretty happy about the fact that they didn't have to bother with reading the actual numbers of how they came to that conclusion, which is a very epic Reddit moment. But what happens when you read the full study? You find out it's just a review of the only 10 studies and abstracts they could find on the subject of PE. So there's no actual study being done here, it's just reviewing the literature, which is pretty normal. But the abstract presented initially leaves out a pretty important detail included in the conclusion of the full study, and that's that this conclusion is based on level 4 evidence. Now, what is level 4 evidence? It is the second lowest form of evidence, just beating out expert opinion with no scientific literature backing it, meaning it is not really that great of evidence. It is literally defined by the fact that the studies are poor quality, as in these studies cannot be treated as solid proof of their findings, and that comparable high quality studies should be done to confirm their findings. So this review concludes that level 4 evidence suggests that extenders are effective. Suggests being the main word here. It is essentially saying that there are some poor quality studies that come to this conclusion, but since they are poor quality, they should not be taken as fact and better studies should be done to confirm the findings. Now, I'm not sure if they didn't read the full paper, but they were pretty quick to bring up that one of those Peyronie disease studies is level 1 evidence, aka the best. So I don't know why they wouldn't mention that this is level 4 evidence, even though that's pretty important. Also, I feel like you should probably mention that the study didn't find evidence for manuals or pumps. Anyways, this last study is the only one that has any real feat. It showed that 23 men with self-identified short penis were able to grow about half an inch using an extender. But there is a small caveat here. This study only measured for flaccid length, not erect, which is probably what most people are here for. And it is generally believed that flaccid length has no correlation to erect, which is why we have the terms grower and shower. Now, could this length gain also apply when they're at full power? Maybe, but the full study even says it's not sure if you can make that conclusion, because they didn't measure it. So overall, out of the 4 studies, 2 of them do not apply to anyone in the subreddit. One of them is based on the second lowest form of evidence and just suggests that extenders work and that better studies should be done to confirm that. And the only other study provides proof, but only for flaccid length. If this is the best evidence that they can come up with to convert a non-believer, things aren't looking good. Okay, but that's about it for this non-believers guide. Now I want to try to understand the typical user of the subreddit to try and figure out who would get into doing all of this. So I want to start this section by saying that every user in this subreddit has a starting length which is average or above average. While researching this subreddit, I could probably count on my hand the amount of penises that would actually be considered small. So it begs the question, who is getting into doing this? And I think the easiest way to understand the user of this subreddit is to look at what other communities that they're active in. And luckily subredditstats.com has a tool that lets us check user overlap between subreddits. So starting off at the top, we got r/big dick problems, which seems to be the end goal that you would graduate to after successfully getting bigger. But please remember that this is the internet, and more importantly Reddit, where people just like to roleplay as the person they wish they were. The next subreddit was surviving infidelity, a support group subreddit for people who've gotten cheated on. I don't got much to say about this one, but being cheated on can lead to overwhelming feelings of insecurity that you never had before. For example, the size of your member. Next, we have seduction, which is exactly what it sounds like.
It's like your shirt and her shirt created hers. Yes. That's surreal.
Now, these next couple of subreddits I think really paint the picture of who this appeals to. First, we have men going their own way, which is a now banned subreddit. The reason this one is banned is because it was essentially an incel light type of community. Men who felt hurt and shunned by modern societal expectations in women, so they decided to go their own way and just focus on themselves. Now, the reason I refer to this community as incel light is because it wasn't inherently hateful. There was a section of the community that just viewed it as self-improvement and not to spite those they felt wronged by. But obviously, given the subject matter, it was also a place where normal incels felt safe. Pretty much this community ended up serving as a gateway into becoming a proper incel, even though it can be argued it didn't want to be that. Also, let me be really clear, I'm not saying that every member of GettingBigger is an incel. Next was NoFap, which I don't think needs an explanation. But for the unaware, NoFap is a community of mainly men who abstain from porn and masturbation due to porn addiction. While the community did start for objectively good reasons, it's mainly become a weird online cult. Many of the users believe that by abstaining from jorking it, that they will gain like supernatural powers, specifically in regards to picking up women. NoFap is its own rabbit hole. There's a bunch of good videos about it. And finally, the subreddit that threw me for a loop when I read it. r/cuckold, a subreddit for men who enjoy watching their partners have sex with other men. And typically the other man has a larger penis than them, which was so crazy that I really couldn't believe it. But the top post of all time on GettingBigger is called Penis Enlargement as a Black Man. And one of the top comments on that post is, "I love watching my wife get fucked by a black guy while I watch." Now, there was pushback on this comment, but that does confirm that there are cucks hanging out in this community. And once again, I am not saying that they're all cucks. I just thought it was funny that I could find this comment. But all in all, these communities really line up with the type of person I was seeing in the subreddit. For one, the sticky post on the subreddit is telling people not to just blindly hate on women, so we know that has been a problem. But more importantly, NoFap, because the whole idea of it is porn addiction. Anyways, while looking at this sub, you'll quickly realize many of the users don't understand that porn is not real and use it as their baseline understanding of sex. And due to this, a lot of them have most likely developed body dysmorphia. Like when we are asking if 8.5 inches is considered small, we have some problems. And if you don't believe me, that one study going through all the literature was trying to find a non-surgical device to give to dudes who keep insisting they need enlargement surgery despite the fact they are normal size. It had nothing to do with people who actually require some form of enlargement. For those who have trouble understanding this concept, porn is to sex what WWE is to combat sports. It looks like a proper combat sport at first glance, but if you have any experience with actual combat sports, you can tell it's fake. WWE does things that you would expect to see in a combat sport, but it is designed to be as entertaining as possible, even if that means doing things you wouldn't do in a proper fight, and cutting out common parts in combat sports that would be a little bit boring. This is to say, if you try to learn to fight by watching WWE, you don't know how to actually fight. Even getting into size, the Great Khali was this giant ass wrestler, but this dude could barely walk. He was no good in an actual fight. So it makes sense that all the members in GettingBigger are so obsessed with getting a bigger size, because when it comes to men in porn, that's all they really offer. Even though the only reason they cast men who are that above average is because it just shows up better on video. Adult films would lead you to believe that if you hit a certain number, you're just automatically good at sex, which is what 99% of the men in this subreddit are chasing. They think that hitting some random number that they decided in their head is going to fix all of their issues. Just like how NoFappers think that if they stop jerking off that they'll randomly get a girlfriend. Sure, it can make you more confident, but it's not going to fix all of your issues. So all in all, what I'm trying to say is that this group is mainly men who are having a mental crisis, who are chasing a solution that A, does not work, and B, is more likely to cause harm both mentally and physically in the long term. But it does beg the question, who is selling them this solution? When I started this video, I wasn't planning on going this deep, but it is so insane that I have to talk about it. Spending any time in Getting Bigger, you'll realize that there are two central authority figures of the practice. First, we have BD, who made all the videos in the starter's guide. BD operates as the practitioner of the exercises and overall regimen of PE. He is also the owner of the subreddit, and he co-owns the company Peak Male Physique with another guy named Hink, aka the guy who wrote the What to Tell a Non-Believer post. And Hink acts as the authority figure of the science behind it all. He is a medical doctor with a passion for PE, and he makes sure to reiterate that he's an actual doctor, specifically a doctor in oncology which focuses on cancer. Does he provide any proof that he's an actual doctor? Not that I could find, but I believe that if you're going to constantly refer to yourself as a doctor and use it to make yourself an authority figure in your content, providing easy to find credentials so people can confirm you are who you say you are is the bare minimum. Most doctor influencers have no problem providing info so you can verify that they are doctors, so I don't get why this is a special exception. Now, Hink also has a YouTube channel where he makes content, so at least we can see what he looks like. Or you would think, but Hink doesn't show his face. He wears a fucking Rey Mysterio mask in all of his videos.
Hey guys, it's Hink here. So I came across a phenomenal post on my subreddit r/Hink, join if you haven't already.
You thought that WWE thing wasn't leading to anything. Now, if this does not set off alarms for you right away, I don't know what will. You could say that he doesn't want it interfering with his real life since talking about dicks online is kind of weird. But being a doctor and talking about dicks is not weird. It's usually a part of the job description regardless of your specialty. And like I said, if you're making a groundbreaking medical discovery like how to make the penis bigger, you would want your face and name attached to it because it would elevate your name in the medical world. Like, I'm sure since Hink specializes in cancer, if he found the cure to cancer, he would want everyone to know who he is. But there's also a problem with his name. You see, if you go to Peak Male Physique's website, there's a banner that says Hink's trial is in. So you click on the results tab to see Hink's study. Mind you, this is the only study provided on the website as proof of their method. And you can only find the study on their website. As in, this study is not peer-reviewed or verified by an unbiased third party so they can write whatever they want. But at the top of the study, we can see Hink's full name, which is Hinkle McCringleberry, a name straight out of one of those Key and Peele football sketches.
And that's a completed pass to a very wide open Hinkle McCringleberry, the rookie out of Penn State. Nice grab by McCringleberry.
So this guy claiming to be a medical authority does not want his face or name associated with his content or his study. Also, real quickly, let's talk about this study. In my opinion, most of the gains perceived here are from the ruler being held differently and or due to the angle, because the participants themselves were in charge of doing the measurements and taking the pictures. Oh, and also there's one set of pictures where they literally paint over the numbers on the ruler, so that's cool. Now, you could argue that these changes are so small that they can't be seen by the human eye. I mean, the average gain was about 1.3 centimeters or less, which is roughly how long the tip of a Q-tip is, or about this much. You know what could cause you to be 1.3 centimeters bigger or smaller on any given day? Besides measurement error because the users were responsible for doing their own measurements. What temperature is the room? When was the last time you busted? What are your energy levels at? Are you in a bad mood? How much sleep did you get? Dick size is not a constant, it is a range with many factors. Like, the one thing they have gotten right across this whole thing is the concept of EQ. Ask anyone with a schlong, there are just some days where you're not hitting full potential due to a bunch of factors. And there are also times where you hit a power level you didn't know you were capable of. And you might say that's anecdotal evidence, Brandon. But this study is essentially anecdotal evidence because it only had 7 participants. And all of them were gathered from Hink's subreddit or Getting Bigger. Like, come on, man. There is another big problem with this study, but first we need to go over another big problem with the website. You know all those strange tools I talked about earlier? You might be asking, well, where can I buy them? Well, of course you can buy every tool on peakmalephysique.com. You know, the same people recommending that you use those devices. And hey, have you not been seeing the results that you wanted from that free starters guide? Well, you're in luck because you can buy ebooks from BD himself with even more knowledge. Oh, and while you're at it, why don't you buy some coaching from Hink and some of his courses as well? If the picture I'm painting is not clear at this point, let me get back to the study for a second. So you might be asking yourself, what protocol were all 7 people following in this study? Well, of course, they were following Hink's enlargement course, taking supplements created by Leviathan Supplements. I wonder who owns Leviathan Supplements. Oh yeah, BD and Hink. And using a pump from peakmalephysique.com. They even make sure to mention how cost efficient their protocol is compared to others in the study. So this whole study is based on products that you can buy from the people conducting the study. The study that is only published on their own website. The study that has not been verified by an unbiased third party that has reasons to be successful for financial gain of the creators. If I'm still not making sense, maybe we should just hear what Hink himself has to say about studies where the company who makes the product sponsors it.
When you actually look at PE, you know, there are actually some pretty decently done trials, if you can find them. There are some problems though. A lot of them are actually sponsored by the device that's being used, and so there's going to be some inherent bias when you're running a trial when the benefit is of the people running the trial.
I gotta figure out how to make money on this. I really want to.
Alright, now I'll say what I'm thinking point blank. In my opinion, based on my research, this is a scam preying on men who are insecure about their size. One of the first big signs is that it has a litmus test to see if you'll drink the Kool-Aid. In Nigerian Prince email scams, they'll purposely put in a bunch of mistakes and misspellings. Not because they're bad at English, but because if someone can look at an email full of mistakes and still decide to respond back, they have proven to the scammer that they lack the ability to identify red flags right in front of their face. It essentially saves the scammer time in dealing with people who will not fall for their scam. However, in the case of GettingBigger, it's a little bit different. Remember how I talked about the starter guide and how it's front loaded with a bunch of warnings and all the injuries that you can get from doing PE? Even going as far as saying the safest way to do PE is to not do it at all. This is the litmus test to see how much you are willing to risk to get bigger. If you can look at all these red flags and still decide to go through with it, you are the prime target for them. Because if you're willing to risk physical harm to yourself, what's a bit of money down the line? The second sign is the free starters guide itself. The whole point of a free starters guide that just so happens to have advanced courses that you could pay for is to get you into their ecosystem and normalize what they're selling to you. It even has a built-in wait time of 2 to 3 months for your newbie gains. In that time, you'll probably become more active in the community and all their niche acronyms will just become normal to you. And if you stick to it that long, you now have a sunk cost into the program. Enough sunk cost that when you aren't making the gains that you thought you would, you might be willing to spend some money on equipment. And of course, you are going to buy the equipment from your new friends that you've come to trust who are teaching you all their ways. Or there's a chance that you start to lose faith and start to voice your concerns about the fact that you think it might not be real. But if you try to do that, people who have a deeper sunk cost than you will be sure to push back right away and make you feel bad for questioning the program. Also, a free guide gives plausible deniability that it's not a scam. Because how can it be a scam if we're offering some information for free? You don't have to spend money. And finally, the people telling you this unbelievable information are also selling products related to it. I don't think this one needs that much explanation. But I will also add that a bunch of science scams typically present studies in the hope that you don't actually read them. They just hope you see that they're presenting studies and take that as credibility. Goblin made a video about this shrooms vape that proudly had third-party testing published on their site to make the consumer feel safe. But if you take the time to read the actual testing document, it straight up says that there are no shrooms in the vape, so who knows what's actually in it.
What's in the box?
Once again, this is my personal opinion. Alright, but that's all the information I got. It's conclusion time. So, in conclusion, can men have hobbies anymore? But for real, let me start by saying, Hink, if there's an off chance that you are seeing this and thinking about responding, don't bother unless you're going to show your face and use your real name. If you aren't going to stand on business, there's no point. But overall, I do feel bad for most of the people in the subreddit that they feel this bad about their size that they're willing to do all of this. Like in the 1 in 1 billion chance that this actually works, is it worth the risk? You only get one dick. Do you want to break it to the point that it never works again? And you know, getting involved in a community like this just ramps up the anxiety because you're constantly thinking about it, which can lead you to doing some irrational things like some users getting filler shots in their you-know-what, to some just straight up getting surgery for it. I also do worry about teenagers getting wrapped up in all of this. If you are a teenager and you're worried about your size, I promise it's still growing. Anyways, that's it for me. If you enjoyed the video, remember to like, comment, subscribe, and all that jazz. Become a member of the Abstrxct army if you want to see videos early among all the other perks. And I'll see you in the next one, which will hopefully be more dumb fun like usual. Bye.
Thanks to the members for supporting the channel. I couldn't do it without your support.